There is a force operating inside you right now, silent, invisible, older than anything you have ever learned. It was there when you first opened your eyes as a child, and it will be there in your final moment of awareness. It does not sleep. It does not rest. And yet most human beings go their entire lives without ever truly looking at it. What if the single most transformative act available to you, at any moment, without cost, without effort, without any external tool, was simply this: to watch yourself, not to judge, not to fix, not to improve, just to watch. That sounds almost too simple to matter. And that is precisely why almost no one does it. Because the mind that is always searching for something complex, something profound, something far away, rarely notices the extraordinary thing that has been happening all along, right here, in the interior of every thought you have ever had. What you are about to understand will not come from outside you. It will come from inside, a question so quiet that the noise of daily life has been drowning it out your entire life. Who is the one watching? Most people live their lives as though they are passengers in a vehicle they never chose and never learned to drive. They experience emotions as weather. Storms arrive without warning, skies clear without explanation. They find themselves repeating patterns, the same arguments, the same fears, the same failures, cycling through their days like a story stuck on the same page. And they call this life. What is rarely understood is that beneath the surface of every thought, every reaction, every moment of suffering or joy, there is a deeper architecture, a structure of perception so intimate, so close, that it is almost impossible to see, not because it is hidden, but because it is the very lens through which everything is seen. You do not perceive reality. You perceive a version of reality that has been assembled, filtered, and shaped by an inner world so layered and complex that even the most sophisticated instruments of neuroscience have only begun to map its edges. Your beliefs create expectations. Your expectations create attention. Your attention creates experience. And the entire cycle runs silently, automatically beneath the threshold of ordinary awareness, like a river that carves stone not with force but with patience, wearing down the landscape of your life one invisible moment at a time. The mystery is not that the world is strange. The mystery is that the mechanism doing the experiencing has remained almost entirely unexamined. Here is the first truth that changes everything. You are not your thoughts. This is not a metaphor. This is not poetic language designed to inspire you. This is a structural observation about the nature of consciousness that, once truly understood, rearranges something fundamental in how you relate to every experience you will ever have. Think about what is actually happening when a thought appears in your mind. There is the thought, perhaps a worry, a memory, a desire, a fear, and then there is something else, something that is aware of the thought, something that notices it arriving, watches it unfold, and observes it dissolve. That something is not the thought itself. It cannot be. Because the observer and the observed cannot be the same thing at the same moment. This gap, however small, however brief, between the thought and the one who watches the thought, is the most important psychological space that exists inside a human being. In that gap, there is freedom. In that gap, there is the possibility of a different response. In that gap, the entire architecture of self-transformation becomes available. Most people never find that gap because they have been living so deeply inside their thoughts that they have forgotten they are not the thoughts themselves. They have become so identified with the content of their mind that they have lost access to the consciousness that contains the mind. Self-observation is the practice of finding that gap and learning to live there. Carl Gustav Jung spent his life mapping the interior of the human psyche, not as an abstract philosophical exercise, but as a cartographer of the soul, drawing the geography of a territory that most people cross daily without realizing what was beneath their feet. Jung understood that the human mind was not a unified, single voice. It was a chorus, a collection of forces, figures, and patterns that he called the psyche, and within it, a vast unconscious dimension that operated entirely outside the awareness of the ordinary waking mind. He observed that people carry within them what he called the shadow, all the parts of themselves they have rejected, denied, suppressed, or failed to acknowledge. These parts do not disappear when ignored. They grow stronger. They emerge sideways, in anger, in projection, in the behaviors that make us say afterward, "I don't know what came over me." Jung's central message was not comfortable. It required courage, the courage to look inward without flinching, to see not only the light that you prefer to show the world, but the darkness that you have been carrying in silence beneath the surface of your personality, shaping your decisions from a place you cannot consciously reach unless you stop and observe. He called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming who you actually are, rather than who you were told to be. And it begins always with one act, the willingness to watch yourself honestly. Self-observation, Jung knew, was not weakness. It was the most demanding form of intelligence. To understand why self-observation is so powerful, you must first understand how the human mind actually constructs reality. The brain receives an almost incomprehensible volume of sensory information every second, far more than conscious awareness could possibly process. So it filters, it compresses, it selects what to present to consciousness based on a set of internal criteria that have been shaped over years, by experience, by trauma, by belief, by identity. This filtering system is largely invisible, and what it produces is not reality. It is a model of reality, an internal simulation so convincing, so seamless, that the mind mistakes it entirely for the world outside. Your beliefs do not simply describe your experience, they generate it. A person who believes they are fundamentally unworthy of love will filter every social interaction through that lens, noticing rejections, dismissing affections, constructing a world that confirms what they already believe, without ever realizing they are the author of that world. This is what psychologists call a self-fulfilling pattern, and what philosophers have called the condition of the sleepwalker. The sleepwalker is not lying about what they see. They are genuinely dreaming. They have simply never woken up enough to realize that the dream is a dream. Emotions, too, are not reactions to events. They are reactions to interpretations of events, to the story the mind constructs around what happened. Change the story, and the emotion changes. Not through suppression, not through denial, but through the slow, patient work of observing the story-making process itself. This is the extraordinary power that lives inside genuine self-awareness. And here, at last, is the revelation that everything else has been building toward. You cannot transform what you cannot see, and you cannot see what you refuse to observe. Every pattern in your life, every repeated failure, every recurring wound, every ceiling you cannot seem to break through, has its roots not in the world, but in an interior structure that you have been living inside without ever having looked at it directly. Self-observation is not the same as self-criticism. The person who watches themselves with judgment is still caught. They have simply moved the identification from the thought to the critic of the thought. The ego has put on a different costume. True self-observation is neutral. It is the consciousness that watches without condemning and without defending. It sees the fear without becoming the fear. It notices the pattern without being destroyed by it. It watches the story the mind is telling and says, quietly, with extraordinary calm, "This is not reality. This is a story I am watching being told." In that moment of neutral witnessing, something unprecedented happens in the human brain. The automatic activation of habitual responses is interrupted. The neurological groove is paused. And in that pause, which may last only a fraction of a second, a new possibility opens. A different response becomes available. The future forks. This is not a metaphysical claim. This is the mechanism through which human beings actually change. Not through willpower alone, not through external pressure, but through the radical, courageous act of seeing themselves clearly, and choosing in that clarity something different. The observer is not passive. The observer is the most powerful agent in the entire architecture of the self. So how does one actually practice this? How does the philosophical insight become a lived experience? The first tool is simply this: the deliberate pause. When an emotion arises, especially a strong one, especially an uncomfortable one, do not act immediately. Do not suppress it. Do not perform it. Simply pause and observe. Ask yourself, what is happening inside me right now? Not to solve it, not to judge it, just to see it. The second tool is what might be called the inner witness, a quality of attention that you deliberately cultivate. In meditation, this is the foundation of most practices, the capacity to sit still and watch the mind without becoming the mind, to notice thoughts arising and dissolving without following every thread. Even 5 minutes of this practice each day begins to create a different relationship between the self and the mind, a small but profound distance that changes everything. The third tool is the examination of narrative. When you find yourself suffering, when you find yourself reactive, ask not what happened, but what story am I telling about what happened? The event and the interpretation are not the same thing. You have far more authority over the second than you know. And finally, honesty. The kind of honesty that Niccolò Machiavelli, the great Renaissance philosopher of power and human nature, understood to be the rarest of all human capacities. Machiavelli knew that most people, most leaders, most individuals, see not what is, but what they wish to see. The person willing to observe themselves without flattery, without illusion, without the comfortable stories the ego constructs to preserve its image. That person, Machiavelli recognized, holds a form of power that no external circumstance can take away. To see clearly is to act wisely, and to act wisely begins with the willingness to see yourself first. You have been searching, perhaps your entire life, for something that would change things, something external, some event, some person, some revelation arriving from the world outside. But the door you have been looking for has always been behind you, in the silence behind the thought, in the awareness that watches without being watched, in the observer that has never changed, even as everything else has. To know yourself is not a destination, it is a direction. A permanent turning of the light inward, with patience, with honesty, with the extraordinary courage it takes to look at what is actually there rather than what you have been telling yourself is there. The mind that can observe itself is a mind that is no longer entirely at the mercy of itself. And that, quietly, completely, irreversibly, changes everything. The world you experience is not something happening to you. It is something unfolding through the consciousness that has the courage to look.